Hi gang, this is Hexy. So I started playing, well, as you all know, a 3-game setup, and I started to play this one. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen, right? Yeah, so I started playing this oldie here, Case Yellow, 1940 Ted Racer GMT game. Really looked interesting. I read through the rules one time and hastily started to go back to them, and then started to play the first turn, going through the sequence of play, which the rule booklet is laid out with the sequence of play, and then the rules follow sequence in the book with the sequence of play. And I always like that because it allows you to just progress page by page through the rule book as you play the game and pick up rules. But then you've got the playbook, which will have the special rules for the game. All right, so we're playing the historic campaign, which is scenario number 1. I played the German half of the first turn. Whether I get everything right in sequence, I don't know. But you have... The Allies have 1 air unit that they can use for interdiction, or they can use it for close air or offensive or defensive support for attacks. The Germans start out with pair drops, which everybody knows, the Rotterdam, Hague stuff up here. So you have 4 regiments that drop, and then you have a division, the 22nd LL. And I don't know much about the 22nd LL, but I do know about the 7th Fallschirmjäger drops around the Hague and everything. So you drop these guys in any legal airdrop hex in the Netherlands. So you can drop them on a city, you can drop them on a defensive network or a fortification, whatever that is, clear towns, villages, whatever. And you have a plus or a minus on you might get pluses on their landing table die roll as to whether or not they survive the landing or not. And then you have a chart over here that tells you when the Netherlands and when Belgium surrender. So, and apparently you can cause the Netherlands surrender on game turn 1 if you get 5 victory points. And the victory points are for a city. Let's see. A city is worth 1. You can terror bomb, which I got to do that on the end phase. You can terror bomb. 3 German-controlled Netherlands towns equal 1 city. Okay? So... required for surrender, 6 city hexes in the Netherlands under German control. So if you capture 3 of their towns, which we have 2 captured right here, that equivalates to 1. I think actually I have 3. I'm not sure. If not, because Arnhem will be here shortly. So 4 of my drops of the regiment, 3 of the 4 survived and took locations. The one that dropped in the Hague up here, they didn't survive. They were eliminated. And then the 22nd LL dropped here next to Breda with one of the 5th or 7th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, and he survived. So they're strong. They've made some captures. The Germans have moved. It's a little hard to cross those rivers through those defensive networks the first time it costs some extra movement points because you gotta add a movement point to destroy the network there. But before I even started my move, you have 6 air units for the Germans. I used 3 to do some Stuka dive bombing. All 3 of them failed. I was trying to bust up the Belgians here. All 3 of them failed. You drop refugee markers. The Germans get to drop 3 inside the cities or towns in Belgium or the Netherlands on the first turn. I haven't got to the point where I believe they affect movement for the Allies to retreat and stuff like that. So I started with the German move. And at the end of a German chit move, which you draw, they get the first chit. All right. You can either choose move or you can choose combat. So this is your typical Ted Racer thing, which is really cool from like the Dark Valley series or the Dark series. So I chose move because I needed to get these units out and on the go. Now, you can't do regular combat, after a move. You got to wait till you draw a combat chit or you select a combat chit. And we did... I got to move this. I used him. I know that I still got 1 left. My bad. All right, so we moved forward, and at the end of a move turn, German yellow movement allowance units, which I don't, I do up here. They can do combat. All right. So those guys right there can do combat. Now, you also have this thing called bridgehead, where if the attack is coming from across a river, where bridges don't have any effect on attack across a river. You're still considered attacking across, whether it's a minor, major, or a Rhine major river. But the Germans have what's called a bridgehead, where you can roll a dice on the bridgehead table, and if successful, it's simulating like some Volksgrenadier units or some infantry units, assault units that are attached to the division, cross the river to secure the other side, and then the defender loses the die roll modifier for the river. So this was successful here, and they were able to actually attack this fortification and took away one of its die roll modifiers, or column shifts. Now, that's another thing about column shifts. The Allies can only get a one column shift, left or right, I believe. Or maybe it's on the attack, they can only get one. The Germans can get two at max. So, I mean, you could have, so this is kind of cool because then you don't overuse like aircraft support, stuff like that, or your ARCO, your supply, your headquarters units for support, stuff like that, because you can only go with so many shifts. So if you have a 4-to-1 attack, the most it can be is 6-to-1, and I think the worst it can be is like 3-to-1. All right, so we had an attack here that was successful, crossed over there, and we attacked down here in, it's funny, around Bastogne, the breakout here through the Ardennes. They literally destroyed a unit right here in Bastogne, or right here, and then they advanced forward. So you got a big armored thrust, as per historical, coming through the Ardennes, all right? The line down here along the Maginot, I gotta check that rule again because it says you have to keep so many corps for the Germans have to be within 2 hexes of all Maginot line hexes. So I got to do some research on that. All right. Initially, Germans have a lot of forces, so do the French. Now, I haven't got into the French yet, but when they do their first move, the dial plan is in effect in the historic scenario. When I start to do it, I will do them. But the basis of it is these units have stars on them. One might have 1 star. They might have 2. They might be black. They might be red. They might be 1 black, 1 red, such. Each one of them means a specific thing they have to do during the first movement phase and the second movement phase for the Allies. They have to move towards the dial plan hexes, which is in here. Some have to do it mandatorily. Some don't get to do anything on the first phase. Some that are in there can't move out of it or whatever. Some have to move directly towards it for both movement phases in a turn, and they got to burn all their movement points to get there. And then I think it's after 2 turns, which by that time the Germans are already punching holes through places. Then they can start, I'm not sure, but then they can start playing or reacting normally. So I'm going to assume the initial thing here is that the Netherlands units cannot leave the Netherlands. They will probably capitulate. The Belgians can have as many as 2 units can cross into France. All right. So other than that, I think anything is eliminated after that. The surrender table for the Belgians is a little different. I'm not anywhere near that yet. Let's see. All Belgian army units are eliminated, or the Germans control Antwerp, Brussels, Ghent, and Ostende. All right, so they got a little work to make that. So Ghent, Brussels, Antwerp. Where the hell is Ostende at? Isn't that on the coast? Yeah, on the coast right here, which is also an evacuation hex. That'll come into play later too. And, Dunkirk is right down here. So I didn't realize how close that was. I mean, I know I'm looking, this is a large scale map, how close that actually is. All right, so like I said, we've just knocked out turn 1. Paratroops have landed. The Germans actually do have a few victory points, but I don't think I calculate that till the end of the turn. I got to read up on that. Like I say, the rules are laid out in order with the sequence of play, so I'll be able to work my way through that. All right, so it was a tedious first turn, a lot of movement, not a lot of combat. I'll be doing a chit draw next to see what happens next. If it's an Axis combat one, then they'll get to do a lot of attacks. Mechanized units cannot attack through forest hexes unless there's a road. So this attack that happened down here, I was going to use both of these units. Turned out I couldn't attack with this one because it wasn't on a road coming across, and there was a river too. So I only got to attack with them, but with the shifts, it worked out good, and they had a good die roll. These units here are your army group. They're kind of like half like headquarters, half like supply. They act like supply units for the troops. There is supply in this game, like such as within 3 hexes of a west wall, they're automatically supplied. All units in the Netherlands, for the German units in the Netherlands for the first 2 game turns, are always in supply. I don't know, it's like whatever the movement point thing is, like 6 for this Arco unit here. That's their, and it's hexes, not movement points. They can supply, because you have to have attack supply to attack. They can supply 6 hexes away, all units. Tracing to, and of course they have to trace an unlimited number of hexes back to a German city. So like Koblenz, the Ruhr up here, Dusseldorf, all those cities there. So as long as they can do that, and then units can trace to them, they're good. Units can also trace to any city or town hex inside of Germany for supply, which is good at the beginning and probably good for these units over here. So, yeah, so that's it for the first half. It's only 10 turns, but you have multiple phases during a turn. So we're probably going to push on with some more of this one. But this is Case Yellow 1940. This is going to be interesting. I'm just getting started. I'm figuring by about turn 3 or 4, maybe 5, I'll have it down a little more pat and be a little more fluid with this. So, all right, so let's get this thing rolling on. Let's get this posted so you can see how this began and what the intent is. And we're going to keep on playing. Talk at you soon. Later.